One of the original reasons I started this show, other than the fact that I'm a bit of a loudmouth and I love to talk about stuff that interests me, is the fact that I wanted to expose people to things they may have never seen before. Let's be honest with ourselves. We can't learn about everything or know about all the stories, characters, and media there is to consume out there. It's simply too much for any one person to realistically go over. But that doesn't mean we can't try to at least learn a little bit about them. And that, my friends, is what we're going to be doing today, talking about a series that may have passed you by, known as the Touhou Project. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, I am your ever-friendly Pokeprof, and welcome back to Fascinating Fiction. So, before we really go deep into what exactly the Touhou Project is, let me give you a small heads up beforehand. This is a bit of a big series with a fairly hardcore fan base. It's not uncommon for someone to be exposed to a single element of this franchise and then get swallowed up whole by the wave of games, stories, and all the other stuff that comes from it. Part of it is thanks to its creator, Junya Oda, otherwise known as Zune. A lover of video games from a young age, Zune set out the moment he was capable to create a game for himself, spending as much time as he could between his classes and job to work on the start of what had eventually become his life's work, the original Touhou game. The game became known as Touhou Raiden, translating roughly into Wondrous Tale, though to eventually be known to fans as highly responsive to prayers. For the sake of brevity and making sure I'm not giving 3 names for every single game I'm going to be talking about in this episode, I'll be referring to the popular titles after this. Being a fan of the shoot-'em-up genre and realizing that at the time most of them were themed around spaceships and airplanes, Zune ended up going with a more fantasy element with his series, with the main character of the Prayers game being a shrine maiden, or Miko, named Reimu Hakure, and I apologize if I am pronouncing that incorrectly. I'm an American speaking Japanese. The game's focus was Reimu running around and bouncing a little yin and yang ball across the screen to turn over cards, while said cards would be firing at her the entire time. Eventually, if the player got good enough, they'd be fighting larger-than-life bosses that would be pretty much doing the same thing, firing on Reimu while she tried to bounce the ball into them. While not really expecting the game to go anywhere, when Zune went to Comiket, a special convention in Japan for self-published works, he ended up selling every single copy of the game he had. But it's the second game, Story of an Eastern Wonderland, that truly set the series onto the path for what it is known for today. Releasing in the same Comiket as the original, the game once again starred Reimu, but was now focused on a more shoot-'em-up style of gameplay that was inspired by the arcade game known as Darius Gaiden. Feeling that games were becoming too easy thanks to wanting to reach a wider audience, Zune specifically designed his games to be incredibly difficult, filling the entire screen with bullets for the players to learn the patterns of and dodge. This type of game would become to be known as Danmaku, or bullet curtain games, though most of us fans on the American side of things simply call them bullet hells. With both games being incredibly popular, Zune made 3 more games during his time at the university, known as Phantasmagoria of the Dim Dream, Lotus Land Story, and Mystic Square. These games included more characters, music, and story, all created by this one single man who loved punishingly hard shooters. The response to the games was so incredibly positive that it actually helped influence some aspects of the series, most noticeably one of the fan-favorite bosses of the previous games, Marisa, becoming a playable character in later entries. This ended once he graduated and was silent for 4 years, where he spent time working with another game company. After leaving for reasons that are said to be him not enjoying working for said company, he returned to his little series starring Reimu, making his own one-man company and starting fresh with a new line of Touhou games created on the Windows operating system. This return was marked with the 6th title in the series, Embodiment of a Scarlet Devil, and showed a massive improvement in the game's art style, controls, music, and more. Serving as a bit of a soft reboot for the series, it allowed players to have also a slightly more constructed story than before, as Reimu wants to find out what's causing a red mist to block out the sun, while Marisa just wants to collect items from whoever might be responsible. I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that one of the characters that was introduced in this particular game, Sakia, eventually became a well-known character in her own right and the 3rd playable character within the entire franchise. It was with the 7th game, Perfect Cherry Blossom, that the series truly came into its own. Several of the elements of the game that had been used or created for Scarlet Devil had been changed or tweaked to near perfection, allowing for not only an incredible sight of bullets to be rained down on the players, but also to allow the ability to show skill and talent in the game itself, as they introduced the concept of grazing into the game. A mechanic where a bullet an enemy fires at you would go through your character model, but would not hit the tiny little box that counted as death for the players. It's also what established a new rule for the franchise, where Zune wanted to reward players by making them only able to see the entire story, should they be able to beat it without dying. Not an easy feat. Several other games for the Touhou series has since been made over the years, bringing the total number of the official games from the Touhou Project up to 18 once the newest title, Unconnected Marketeers, releases in May of this year. Actually, a couple of days from now. But even though this franchise is well known for its music, gameplay, and almost 200 different characters to choose from with their own histories, identities, and looks, what actually really makes this franchise so popular is the freedom in which Zune has given to the fans. For the most part, the creator of this series has been incredibly open and well receiving of fans creating their own versions of Touhou games, be it as simple as slapping the different Touhou sprites over Pokemon to collect your favorite demons, yokai, and characters from the series, or something as elaborate as a full-on game with its own development team creating from scratch to sell on Steam. All of this is allowed by Zune so long as unauthorized commercial distribution is avoided, endings aren't spoiled, and the game in question gives proper attribution to the original creator. This has also been expanded to other forms of media as well, with music, comedy skits, comics, internet memes, stories, you name it. The freedom has allowed Touhou to be able to spread far and wide. And believe it or not, I have only just scratched the surface of Touhou, mostly giving you all a general overview of the series and just what it entails. The actual stories themselves are just as interesting, and there are a bunch of little in-jokes that have become well-loved aspects of the series, such as good old 9-ball here. But for now, I'd suggest perhaps looking into that a bit more yourselves, and should we want to learn a bit more about these characters, we'll have to check it out next time. With that, I hope you have all enjoyed another episode of Fascinating Fiction, and we'll hopefully look forward for more to come. Should you have any suggestions on something you'd like to see me cover, please leave a comment below, as well as liking the video and subscribing if you wish to see more content like this. It really does help us out. Be sure to also check out Getting With the Program, a more off-the-cuff show in which Kitty Cross, Ash and Sky and I go through a series that one of us are not familiar with episode by episode, and give our honest thoughts about them. I also have a Twitter and a Twitch if you wish to follow us there, where we usually will play games and just give my general thoughts about what's going on at the time. But until then, folks, stay frosty.